What's up, everybody? Jackson Fuller here, and you are listening to another episode of Hoggin the Mic. Andrew Hutchinson will join us momentarily to discuss opening weekend at Baum Walker Stadium. It feels good to have some non-scrimmage, real-life counts in the win and loss column baseball games to go over today. We're recording this episode on Tuesday morning, and of course, Arkansas won its opening weekend series over James Madison, taking 3 out of 4. And I think there was a lot to like. Any concerns? We'll dive into what we saw and maybe what we still need to see from David Van Horn's squad moving forward. We'll touch briefly on the Arkansas basketball news of the week after an 0-2 showing with losses to Tennessee and Texas A&M. Very depressingly, for the very first time in Eric Musselman's tenure at the school, the Hogs are now below 500. So a nightmare season looks like it's just going to stay a nightmare, but thankfully baseball season is here. So let's play that music, bring Hutch in, and start up the latest episode of Hoggin the Mic. Hutch, how's it going, man? We're going to just get what the hog out of the way right now. Did you have a chronic meltdown on Sunday after Arkansas lost to James Madison, thinking the season was over, like a lot of the Arkansas baseball faithful that I personally saw on Twitter coming off that loss?
That was as expected, that reaction. That happens every year when they lose one of these games. And I have to try to tell people every time it's not a big deal. It's one game in a 56 game season, it's one game in a 4 game series. They're going to be okay. But yeah, that was so predictable. That's why I put out there on Monday, I said, hey, contrary to popular belief, the season was not canceled on Sunday after that loss. They played again on Monday, and they looked pretty daggum good on Monday as well. So I think there was, as you said, a lot to like this past weekend, even with that one loss on Sunday.
Yeah, and they even moved up in the D1 baseball rankings before Monday's game was even played. So they did something at least over the first 3 games that D1 baseball like. I think that also had to do with Florida going 0-1 against St. John's, having the other 2 games of that series rained out. But it's baseball, man. We got a long, long way to go here, and I don't think any of us are going to overreact to the wins or the losses just yet. Although maybe that changes next weekend with the big time opponents that Arkansas's got coming up. But we'll get to that later. First off, Hutch, let's go through the series real quickly. Opening day, 6-4 Arkansas victory over JMU. I think obviously the storyline of that day was Hagen Smith only lasting an inning, but otherwise a really, really great performance for the Hogs. They then won 15-5 in 8 innings. The bats came to life on Saturday. We mentioned the Sunday loss. It was really only really doomed by one unfortunate inning where James Madison got 2 bunt for base hits and a walk with no outs, and then all of a sudden it was danger zone for Arkansas. That's fine. That happens. One bad inning. They bounced back with a terrific pitching performance and closed out the series win Monday with a 4-0 victory. I put a poll up on my Twitter, Hutch, after the series, and I might do this every weekend just to see, and we can maybe start our baseball discussion here, and maybe that'll be a good launch pad for us to talk. MVP of the series, I had 4 candidates. I had Will McIntyre, I had Colin Fisher, Hudson White, and Ty Wilmsmeyer. Who for you was the MVP of this weekend's series against James Madison?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm going to go with Will McIntyre because I mean his 5 2/3 innings on Friday were absolutely massive. I mean you could that series could have gone south in game one easily. Whenever your superstar top 10 pick Hagen Smith only lasts 1 inning, but he came in and he really quieted them down. He gave up 1 run. Really, if you look back on it, shouldn't have given up that 1 run. It was based on there was a leadoff double. Jason Jones, not a natural left fielder, took a bad angle. Probably should have held it to at least a single. If not caught it, it would have been a tough play. But still, should have kept it to a single. And if that happened, the run wouldn't have scored because they came around to score on like a ground out and a sac fly or something along those lines. And so that run shouldn't have happened. And then so that was huge to get game one. And then in the fourth game of the series, he came in and pitched 2 innings. And as Dave Van Horn said, he they felt like if they could get through that eighth inning, that they were going to be good, and they did. He got them through that inning, and sealed. There, another guy came in and finished it off. Stone Hewlett did, but those two innings that he pitched were tremendous, and it showed you that he is capable of pitching twice on a weekend, like we saw a little bit late last season, and it kind of be the quote unquote Kevin Kopps role where he could pitch twice despite having already thrown 71 pitches a few days earlier. So to me, I'm going to go with Will McIntyre.
I agree. McIntyre was my choice. I think for me, second place is probably going to be Wilmsmeyer. Just the defense that he played, and he had two pretty good days at the plate. Obviously, the highlight was Saturday when he hit a home run. He, I think, drove in 5 runs and had the robbery in center field. And just to get that kind of production from the 9-hole hitter was huge for Arkansas. But I think you're right. McIntyre's got to be the obvious choice. Being able to pitch 5 2/3 innings in the cold and then come back on Monday is really admirable to me. I mean, it's impressive, but it's also admirable that he wanted the ball again. And I think I like that Dave Van Horn gave him the ball. And, Arkansas had other arms that could have come out of the bullpen that we hadn't seen yet. But I think DVH, I liked his honesty in the press conference after the Monday game saying, hey, we kind of needed this win, early in the season. Yeah, they didn't want to tie this series. They wanted to win this series, go to Texas next week with a winning record. Give it to probably your most, at least your most reliable arm out of the bullpen. It feels like McIntyre is going to be that guy when they, need a few innings that's going to be the first person that they call upon. And I thought he was terrific, and he was honestly a little surprising because I don't have any experience with Will other than the off season, and we both know he hasn't had the best spring. But you guys told me he turns it on for the games, and I just had to see it to believe it, and here we are. So you mentioned Hagen Smith's 1-inning performance and how Will was able to kind of shut the door there. Dave's not very concerned. Are you any concerns from you about Hagen and just what we saw from him on Friday?
No, I mean he was pitching in like 38-degree weather or something like that. That's not fun, especially for a guy who's from Texas, and he's a guy that is just such a power arm. It's one outing. I saw enough of him during the preseason to know that he's going to be fine. I really believe that. It may be a little bit concerning in that he was still getting working into full counts. I mean, I think 4 of the 7 guys he faced had a full count, which contributed to his pitch count being 42 through 1 inning. But it's still, and plus, Dave Van Horn even mentioned it after the game. Like, it was really close to not being that bad of an inning. He walked the leadoff guy in a really good at bat. Then he plunked to the next guy in an 0-2 count. That's kind of bad luck, but also just like, hey, it's whatever. You could fix that. And then the next guy was their best hitter, Trimble, and he won. He thought he struck him out. They thought they had a foul tip caught by the catcher. Hudson White even said he thought that he dropped the ball on the transfer, so it should have been an out. But it's called a foul ball, stays alive. Next pitch hits what looked like it was just going to be a fly ball to center, and it just kind of keeps going because the wind's blowing 10, 15 miles an hour straight to right and blows out of the ballpark just over the fence. So really kind of bad luck on Hagen's part. So I'm not too concerned. It might actually work in Arkansas's favor. Now you're going to have a pissed off Hagen Smith ready to go Friday night against Oregon State. That should, I think that bodes well for Arkansas.
Yeah, and even looking back, I went back last night and kind of went very quickly. I'm not in some sort of deep analysis of just every kind of inning, just kind of read through to see what happened, if anything kind of jumped out at me. And right away, what jumped out at me, the first thing that I read was looking back at Hagen's first inning, that ball that Trimble hit out to center field for the 3-run homer, probably a routine fly ball if the wind's not swirling the way it was. So that's 1 out. And then the very next batter was a ground out to second. That could have been an inning-ending double play. So even with the unfortunate drop third strike, even with like the high pitch count in the first 2 batters and the walk and everything, like he was a swirling wind away from getting out of that inning unscathed. So no, I'm not concerned, but I did write in my weekend kind of observations, Look, I think Hagen has all the arm talent in the world, and he is going to be a terrific pitcher this year for Arkansas. But if the Razorbacks want to live up to their potential, he's got to go deep into games. I just think he has to, because how much better would Arkansas's bullpen have been set up for Sunday if maybe Gage Wood or Will McIntyre doesn't have to throw Friday night, and then you can push one of those guys to Saturday, and then push the Saturday guys to Sunday, or hold them for Sunday. I think in an ideal world for Dave Van Horn, when he's done Friday night, he still has Will McIntyre and Gage Wood innings to burn the rest of the weekend. If you could go 1-1 or 2-0, where McIntyre throws two and you save Gage for another time, and then McIntyre's proven he can throw more than two innings on a weekend already. So that's the only thing that I'm going to be really like looking out for the next couple weeks. Is I know it's way too early to panic. It's going to be too early to panic next week, but I need to see that strike count get up. And I do think there's a little bit of pressure on him now going into Friday. He's going to be pissed and motivated, but the first start did not go how anyone envisioned. I think, hey, let's kind of see it now Friday night against Oregon State next week. And am I wrong to put maybe a little bit of pressure on Hagen there?
No, I mean I think that's only going to come with territory. I mean preseason SEC pitcher of the year, projected top 10 pick. I mean that's you come out and you give up 3 runs in 1 inning and throw 42 pitches and that's it against a team like James Madison. Yeah, there's going to be pressure. So I think that's totally fair. And plus Hagen, if there's one like critique of Hagen's first 2 years at Arkansas, it's the fact that he hasn't been able to work deep in games because his pitch count gets too far up. He very rarely gets you through 6 innings or even 5 innings. Uh, that's something that they feel like he's improved on this year. That's what Matt Hobbs has told me. That's what David Van Horn has said. So I think he's going to be fine. And we may not see it early on because even if he had gotten through that inning, like you said, get the fly out, get a double play ball, whatever, he's probably only going to throw 5 innings tops because they're not going to throw him that much more on opening day, especially when it's 38 degrees outside. So you probably wouldn't have gotten him through 7 innings or whatever, like you hope maybe time LSU comes to town or something like that. It's a slow build. That is one thing about Dave Van Horn that I credit him for is he sticks to his guns with that. He's not going to throw, even when he's had a Blaine Knight, Isaiah Campbell, Patrick Wicklander, whoever, Connor Nolan, like they don't throw a ton of innings on opening day. They work it up, and then by the time SEC play gets here, boom, they're ready to roll. So I think there is some pressure on him. Again, I don't know, would they send him out there for 7 innings? I mean, maybe if his pitch count's really low and it's been very not stressful, as Dave Van Horn likes to say. But still, it wouldn't surprise me if he goes out there. He's got a shutout through 6 innings, but he's at 85 pitches. It wouldn't surprise me to see him go to the bullpen at that point, even though he probably has another inning or two in the tank.
For sure. My demanding of Hagen Smith throwing deeper into the games it's not a next weekend type thing. I think the pressure on him for Friday is just to look better, show those signs of why he was the SEC preseason pitcher of the year. Giving up a 3-run homer in the top of the first was just tough, man. It felt like with the football and basketball struggles we had this year, it was like, oh my God, not again. Like what this are the golden knight of Arkansas athletics struggling. Just very, very funny to me in retrospect. I don't like there's not a lot of concern, and I'm sure Hagen doesn't find any of it funny, and he's ready to go shut everybody up Friday night. Outside of Hagen, the pitching for the most part this weekend was terrific. I was so impressed. For a lot of this Arkansas baseball team and the preseason and everything, I've been kind of in wait and see mode, as I've said on this podcast a bunch. And man, they went out and showed it. I think Parker Coyle had a rough outing. He gave up 4 runs in only 2/3 of an innings. Otherwise, I think every other pitcher did really well. Gabe Gackle took the loss on Sunday and gave up 3 earned runs, but I already mentioned the 2 bunts. Mason Molina, maybe the only other guy that kind of struggled, but he didn't even. I mean, he struck out 9 batters in 3 2/3 innings. He just got a little loose there before being removed in his 4th inning of work. What pitcher do you think from this weekend that had a strong performance is the most meaningful for Arkansas this year? Maybe not who you were most impressed with or who had the best performance? Because I think that answer is Colin Fisher. But out of any of the starters, any of the bullpen guys, who is going to be the like him having a good performance is a very, very big impact on the baseball season moving forward.
I'll go with Cody Frank. He's another one of those guys that made 2 appearances. He pitched on Saturday and then pitched again on Monday. Retired all 10 batters he faced. That was really, really good to see. I mean, he was a guy that was going to eat a lot of innings last year until he tore his lat muscle. Had to miss the rest of the year. Luckily, it was early enough in the season where he was able to get the red shirt. Came back. He's a sixth-year super senior. He's married, has a kid now. I mean, he's a grown man, and he came back, and to have that performance was awesome. He struggled a little bit in the preseason. I was a little bit concerned whenever he came out there because like, oh boy, like because when he came in on Saturday, the game was still up in the air. Like they won in run rule fashion, but I think it was a 2-run game and maybe a runner on base whenever he came into the game, and he got them out of it. And then Arkansas poured it on, was able to run roll them. He actually got a save in a in a 10-run win. You don't really see that too often.
No.
But he was phenomenal. And then we actually talked to him after a Monday when he pitched another inning, went 1-2-3, and he made the comment. I didn't even think about this that when he ran out there and heard the cheer of the crowd, he said that was way better than the last time he was on the mound when the last sound he heard was the groan of the fans who have already seen multiple pitchers go down with injuries and with the trainer out there. I mean, I remember that moment, and there was an audible groan from the crowd. So I was happy for him and also happy for Arkansas because that's a big time arm if he can just go out there and be a guy, even if he only goes once a weekend and gives you 2 or 3 innings. That's pretty good, especially if your starting rotation can work you deeper into games like you expect they can.
Yeah, I love that Cody Frank pick. Just I'm actually I haven't decided yet. I'm going to try and write a baseball story today for tomorrow to come out, and I was thinking about maybe writing about Cody because I also loved his quote when talking about going to Arlington next weekend and like wanting to I think it was something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing here, of like it's our time to show people like how good we are, against this better competition. And it just seemed like he seems like a very mature veteran presence that if he is going to come out of the bullpen and log innings, that's a huge win because now and log consistent innings because now you're talking about arguably Arkansas has 3 guys they highly trust coming out of the bullpen. And that's a luxury in college baseball, honestly, to have 3 guys that you can trust. And those 3 are Frank, Wood, and McIntyre. But there's potential for that number to grow even more based off what I saw this weekend. I really loved what we saw from Gackle. I thought DBH left him in just 1 inning too long. And even then, like we said, the balls didn't even leave the infield. That caused him trouble. And really, I liked what I saw from Stone Hewlett there at the end of the game, as being a lefty guy, that he got some righties out. He worked around some trouble and, got out of the inning unscathed to hold on to the shutout. Just so much to like from the pitching staff this weekend. And, really proving all the national and local pundits right who said this could be one of the best pitching staffs in the country. We haven't really talked about the starters, though, other than Hoggin. I think Colin Fisher was the surprise of the weekend. Hutch, are you ready to apologize for not naming him your Monday starter last week and then choosing somebody else?
This is just another classic case of Dave Van Horn knows more about baseball than me and pretty much anybody else listening to this right now. The man is a genius, and this is just another example because Colin Fisher, I went back and looked, like he was the 10th highest ranked pitcher in the signing class for Arkansas. I mean, he was like number 409 in the country on perfect game, which, pretty good. I mean, top 500 recruit. You take that in football for sure. But he was behind 9 other dudes, including 6 of which I believe are actually still on the roster. Take out the guys that got drafted or transferred out, and all he does is he gets the opening weekend nod, in the 4th slot, and goes out there and throws 5 scoreless. He retired the first 6 batters he faced. I mean, yeah, he had some great defense behind him. Don't get me wrong, that helped, but he was really good in a very important game, as you said earlier. Dave, wasn't shy about it. Like they needed to win 3 out of 4, not split the series. Like that would have been a little bit tough to swallow. You can write off 1 loss, but not 2. So That was a big time performance by the freshman, and man, if they've got that guy as a fourth starter and he can do that consistently, now that's the key. In the preseason, he was a little bit inconsistent, but that's that just speaks to the depth of the pitching staff, I think.
Quick follow up question on that, Hutch. You kind of you kept up with preseason stuff more than I did. Did he have this kind of control? And I mean, obviously he walked some guys in the preseason, but when he got into trouble, was it due to walks? Was it guys hitting the ball hard off of him? Because what stood out to me was his control, pounding the zone. If he can do that consistently, he'll be a fine midweek starter to eat innings. But was this like a surprise that he was maybe able to throw so many strikes and not walk anybody through his 5 innings of work?
Based on what we saw in the fall, he was a little bit more wild. I think he had like 7 walks and hit a guy in 8 innings or something like that in the fall. And he also got hit around a little bit. Like his teammates were able to hit him pretty decent. I think he had like his opponents had like 280 something on him in the fall, which not very good. But then in the spring, we only got to see him twice. The first time we saw him, he was electric. I mean, I think he went 6 up, 6 down. Really, really impressive. That's kind of the moment that I was like, maybe he could be your third start or your fourth starter on opening weekend if Ben Bybee's not healthy or whatever. Which we found out later he was not just dealing with a hamstring injury, but he was also sick this past weekend, so he didn't pitch at all. And then I think the next outing he pitched. I think he maybe gave up a little bit in the first inning, like gave up like a bomb or something like that. But then I was really impressed. He came back and didn't seem like it phased him. He was able to get through another couple innings unscathed. That was all the damage he gave up. Didn't really walk a lot. Teams really the opponents didn't really hit him that much. So yeah, he was vastly improved in the spring in that regard. Just throwing strikes, pounding the zone like he did this past start.
Good stuff. I mean, gosh, just adding that kind of arm to your pitching staff for like if he can go 5 innings on a Wednesday and can serve, the amount of arms that you have to throw out of the bullpen. I mean, it's just for me when I think about college baseball, I just keep coming back to that. Can you save up your best bullpen arms and have them available to pitch on Saturday and Sunday? And if you can, you have a great shot to win a majority of your weekend series. And if you can't, like you're gonna have to manufacture some wins and ride some luck and throw some arms that you don't want to. But Colin Fisher becoming a reliable arm would be huge for this team. Maybe not in the postseason, but maybe so. You get to that double elimination, and you need to throw a fourth starter out there. And he's been reliable all year. But at least in the immediate and the regular season, if he can be that reliable weekday starter, midweek starter, it's going to be huge for Arkansas. I don't really have too much to say more about Brady and Mason. I thought they both looked good. Mason got in a little high pitch count and into some trouble at the end, but I'm not concerned about him. And Brady, I think Brady is going to be just a terrific Saturday starter. He's going to provide what a lot of starts like he did this weekend, 5 innings, only one earned run, not, 4 strikeouts, which might not be that many compared to Hagan and Mason, but only 2 walks. And I mean, you got much to say about either of those guys, or is it just kind of this is what we expected from two of the better non-aces in the SEC this year?
I would say Molina. I know his pitch count got up, but he didn't really walk too many. I feel like that was a real big. That was what I was really watching for him is the walks because that was what he struggled with during the preseason. Seemed like he was better in the games. Really high strikeouts, as you said. That was really good to see. Would like to see him work deeper than 3 2/3. But yeah, I'm not too worried about that. Brady also a little bit wild as well. But the thing with Brady that surprised me was that he pitched to contact more than you would expect. Brady's been a high strikeout guy over his career, and he's got the stuff to have a high strikeout total. But he got a lot of fly ball outs, ground outs, stuff like that, which is what enabled him to go 5 innings, even with I think he had 2 walks and hit 3 batters. So like that to me, that's what you need out of him is to be able to work 5-6 innings and He's proven that he can do that in his last two outings. He had a big start in the postseason in the regional. First time he really got kind of turned loose with no pitch count. And then again on this past Saturday, I thought he looked pretty good. Very very anxious to see what he looks like against Oklahoma State this coming Saturday.
Yeah, and I think uh, if those strikeout numbers go up, I think that's a good thing. But also, I don't mind pitching to contact. If it works and you're getting the outs and you're keeping that low pitch count down, I think Molina striking out so many guys played a part, like you said, into his pitch count getting so high. Let's get to the offense real quick. I don't think there's a lot of real big takeaways from this weekend. I mentioned Ty Wilmsmeyer and Hudson White already. I thought they were terrific offensively. Hudson in particular, I mean, he was an extra base machine. Felt like every hit he had was a double. I was impressed with him at leadoff. He made a base running mistake, and I think DVH flipped him to the two hole in the second game, and I thought maybe that was just seeing his extra base power and how well he'd been performing, try and get him in some RBI situations. Didn't really work out, but he still led the team in runs this weekend. The one thing I will say is I'm a little concerned coming out of this weekend about the lack of power that we saw overall. 0 home runs in either of the last two games. The first game, the wind was obviously swirling. They hit two balls out. How much of that was because of the wind? I don't know. I'm not gonna take anything away from Sprague-Lott and White and their home runs, but Saturday was a great day offensively. Otherwise, I wasn't overly impressed with the offense. I thought that they left a lot of guys on. They had some spots to put up huge numbers, and they didn't take advantage. Uh, I'm not pressing the panic button by any means, but it is something that I'm gonna, kind of monitor. And I think these guys hit the pitching so good especially in the late spring. It felt like every game we went to, every scrimmage we went to, Arkansas was like hitting multiple home runs every game and going to work on some of these great pitchers that we saw this weekend. Maybe that comes with an entire offseason of seeing the same arms every day, and now you're seeing some new arms and things go back down a little bit. I don't know. Anything to what I'm saying that's kind of perked your ears and you share any similar sentiments?
Yeah, I think even Dave Van Horn said he wishes they would drive in a little bit, drive in a few more runs. I think the loss on Sunday really stands out to me because they had base runners all over the base paths on in that game, especially early on. Like the first, I think it was like 12 of the first 19 Hogs reached base, and they only scored 2 runs, and that's not acceptable. I mean, you got to be able to score more runs than that. He had a couple of bases loaded situations, including one with Kendall Diggs, your dude, up to bat, and he flies out. Just missed a pitch. It was it was right down the middle. That's a pitch you expect him to hammer, and maybe he does later in the season. So I'm not hitting the panic button by any means. The other thing you got to consider is, like you mentioned, the success they had maybe against Arkansas's arms. There's a drop off between Arkansas's arms and the James Madison arms. They're used to seeing 94, 95, every at bat in the scrimmages, and then they come out and they're only seeing like 90, 92, and a bunch of junk stuff like that. What you expect from these mid majors. So I think that maybe played a little bit into it, but yeah, they've got to be able to take advantage of the runners in scoring position. But I'm not in the panic button because I've seen this before. They've had years like this where they've struggled to drive in runs early, but then they eventually, get it comes together. So again, not hitting the panic button. I'm very anxious to see what they do against these probably better, more power arms this weekend in Arlington.
Yeah, I agree. But I will say about JMU, I mean, yeah, the arms are definitely a step backwards, but I mean, they won 30 games last year, and the Sun Belt it's not the SEC, it's not any of the Power Five conferences, but it's a pretty good baseball conference, all things considered. I mean, with Coastal Carolina, in that conference, and Georgia State's got a pretty good program. So does Southern Miss. I think they're going to win 30 games again this year. I was pretty impressed with JMU's depth of pitching. There never really felt like there was one moment in the the Monday game where they brought in a guy and I think he walked two straight batters and then got the hook where it was like, ooh, this guy might not be ready to face Arkansas. Otherwise, it didn't really feel like that. Of course, I didn't attend Saturday's game where they scored 15 runs, so maybe that's why I had that notion. But yeah, I think the one thing that I did want to touch on, and then I think that's it for me on baseball. Is I was surprised by the amount of rotation in the lineup this weekend, and I'm looking at the game that they lost on Sunday. You mentioned Kendall Diggs flying out the bases loaded. He left three guys on base. Ross Lovich left three guys on base, went 1 for 3 with a walk. And I thought Lovich played pretty well, but then I see that he left three guys on base. And it's not like any of the other left fielders really grabbed the spot, for themselves this weekend. But I got to say, I was surprised with seeing Lovich, Souza. We saw Roland on Monday. Um, is this something that Dave does early in the year? Is there some rotation in his lineups usually early on, or is this maybe a sign that some position battles still haven't played their way out yet?
This is Dave Van Horn. This is what he typically does in these early games. It's not uncommon at all. We'll probably even see a little bit of it this weekend in Arlington, even with the step up in competition. Like, I think Dave's goal is to just finalize something around the time SEC play rolls around, and he usually does. There may be a spot or two where he has some rotation, but you're going to pretty much know what it is pretty early on. Like, I mean, even last year they had a true like two catcher system between Parker Rowland and Hudson Polk. And by I want to say the second weekend of SEC play, Parker Rowland was clearly the guy. And they went with him except for one weekend where he was hurt. And every once in a while there's a position they maybe have some rotation at. Maybe we see that in left field. I think that a lot depends on how consistent Jason Jones can be, because he did get that force to start in Game 4, the only guy that started 2 games in left field, and I thought he swung the bat really well. I mean, he only had one hit, but the line out that he had like 109-mile-an-hour exit velo, and it was just caught by the center fielder. So, and plus he made a couple of diving grabs out there and left, which never hurts, especially build your confidence and everything. So. I think we're going to see some rotation, especially in the midweek games, especially in these early non-conference weekend games, because Dave wants to see, okay, what can you do? We've seen what you can do in scrimmages, but who can perform when the lights are on per se? So that's just a Dave Van Horn thing, and it's going to work its way out. I do not anticipate it being an Eric Musselman, 15 different starting rotations and however many games they've played. So I think they're going to find something, settle on it, and minor tweaks here and there. Maybe the order changes a little bit. Maybe one guy subs in, one guy subs out, or whatever. But you're going to get some consistency by the time SEC play rolls around.
Okay. I thought it was interesting that he decided to start Lovich and Souza in Game 3. I mean, the odd rotation is obviously makes sense in baseball. It's always such a long season. You could feel great one day and not feel great the next, and you could be a sports reporter bum like us. When you're a Division I baseball player, if you're not feeling so great when you wake up on a Sunday morning, that might impact your play. But I was a little surprised seeing that type of, seeing two guys that weren't maybe people we thought were going to be everyday starters, or even really kind of in the competition, especially before Peyton Stovall's injury. I don't think there was really room for Souza to get an at-bat or to get a start on opening weekend if it wasn't for the Stovall injury. And then Lovich and left, I definitely thought the competition was between Jason Jones and Will Edmondson. But Lovich is that left-handed bat out there, and if you're going up against a right-handed pitcher, maybe he's a good option. I thought he went, like I said, 1 for 3. With a walk, he left 3 guys on, but 2 for 4 on base percentage. No shame in that whatsoever. So it'll be interesting to see. I'll try and monitor at what point maybe we stop seeing those kind of spot starts and see a exact starting lineup develop. But shout out to Ryder Helfrich before we move on. Lived up to the hype at least for one game. Wish we maybe could have seen more of him, but it seems like Dave wanted to get Parker Rowland in there to catch the freshman and another left-handed at bat against the right-handed James Madison pitcher. You think Helfrich's a starter by April? Like maybe not an everyday starter, but 2 out of 3 games he's either in the lineup at DH or catching.
That's a good question. It probably also depends on kind of what Jack Wagner does. He's a guy that, didn't really produce a whole lot. I don't know. I'm pulling up the stats right now. Didn't feel like he had the best weekend. I mean, he did go 2 for 6 at the plate. But if he doesn't produce, then you stick McLaughlin at first, and you could just rotate who DHs between Hudson White and Ryder Helfrich. I think Hudson White did okay behind the plate defensively, but that is something to monitor. If they feel like Ryder Helfrich is the better defensive option, at what point do they maybe start Helfrich 2 out of 3 games behind the plate with Hudson White being more of a DH? That is something to keep an eye on. But Hudson White's going to be in the lineup somehow, some way, because the dude can hit. I think he had like a 1,300 plus OPS or something like that. So you're going to have him in the lineup. But yeah, I thought Helfrich looked good. He didn't look like a freshman. He didn't sound like a freshman when he came in and talked to us after the game either. So pretty cool for him to get that kind of performance on his 19th birthday on Saturday as well.
Definitely. And real quick, two guys that we have not really mentioned yet, and now I'm looking at the season-long stats, and it's like, gosh, they did have good series, but it didn't really feel like it was that great of a series. Are Kendall Diggs and Ben McLaughlin, two returners, two lefties. Diggs was 6 for 15 with 3 doubles and 2 RBIs, and then McLaughlin went 5 for 13 and only had 1 double, but he did have 4 RBIs, which is tied for the second most of the weekend. So it was interesting looking at the lineups all weekend and thinking, I thought to myself, man, like, this is still a really good team, but there is a little bit of, not a hole, but that middle of the lineup becomes a little less fearsome with Stovall's injury. Hitting Ben McLaughlin, I don't think is your prototypical number 3 hitter, and that's what he hit Monday, at least when they flipped Diggs and White. He's going to hit cleanup, and I don't think he's your prototypical cleanup hitter either when White's hitting there. I don't know, it's just something to think about moving forward, is how does Stovall really change things. And I think moving everybody down, getting some more of that pop between Diggs and Aloy further down the lineup. Looking forward to him coming back. I know it's a ways away though, so let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Are you feeling the same thing about the middle of the order for Arkansas, or no concerns out of you with those guys?
Yeah, I would like to see some more pop, especially out of Aloy, because that's what we saw from him during the preseason. We led the team in home runs in the fall and the preseason. So
he was cold, Hutch. He was freezing cold.
The poor Hawaiian is not used to playing in 30-degree weather for sure. That's what they kind of tabbed it on. And honestly, after I think he got off to like an 0 for 6, 0 for 7 start, and I think it was 0 for 7, and had like 4 strikeouts and had left some guys on base. So it felt really disappointing, but then he ends the game on Saturday with a 2-run single to invoke the mercy rule. And then from that point on, he went 5 for 10. And you can't complain with 5 for 10, even though I think only one of those hits was an extra base hit, and it was a double. We're going to see the power eventually. I think that's really good to see. And then you mentioned Ben McLaughlin. I was actually talking to Andrew Ellis of Natty State Sports about this at one of the games. And Ben McLaughlin is a DVH guy. It feels like all of Dave Van Horn's best teams have a guy like Ben McLaughlin who he's playing in a lineup filled with like potential future MLB players. I mean, Aloy, White. I mean, these are all dudes that could play in the big leagues, and he's in the middle of it, and he may be one of the better hitters on the team. He just hits. He's a good, and I was impressed with what he did defensively at first base, honestly. But he just hits. He's a really, really good college hitter, even if he's not the best pro prospect. So I think he's going to be a guy that's just in the middle of it. Maybe kind of like a Carson Shaddy on the 2018 team. He was a second baseman, just a hell of a college baseball player, and a vital piece of that team that was national runner-up. That's kind of what I see Ben McLaughlin kind of having, a different kind of player, but similar kind of impact on this year's team as far as being a really good hitter.
And no shame in that. Sometimes I think we all get a little sucked into the long ball and OPS and extra base hits and all that. And at the end of the day, if you can get Aloy 5 for 10 and had 4 RBIs without that power to close the stretch. If you you can drive in runs with a single up the middle and the bases loaded. You're all right by me, and that's gonna play in the SEC too when that season rolls around. So, um, yeah, good stuff. Really fun weekend at Baum Walker. I think it went about as well as Arkansas could have asked for. Of course, they would have been happier with a sweep, but it's baseball. Sometimes weird things happen, and I think some weird things happen in that third game that they lost. And like I said, I think JMU is a pretty good team. I think they're going to win over 30 games this year, and this was just a good first weekend test. And now we really get the excitement of going to Arlington next weekend to face number 7 Oregon State, Oklahoma State on Saturday, I believe, and Michigan on Sunday. Um, three brand name programs. We'll learn a lot about Arkansas baseball next week. I don't think we need to learn any more about Arkansas basketball, Hutch. Golly, it's been a rough one this year. It was a rough week, 0-2 for the Hogs, but I know on Saturday I did not go to the baseball game, so I could cover the basketball game. Don't know how smart of an opinion or of a decision that was by my part. You did not watch the game on Saturday, other than I think you said you had to rewatch for a story. You have any questions for me? What's on the tip of your tongue about Arkansas losing to Mississippi State this weekend? Anything that you want to know, or anything that you feel like we need to discuss with the basketball team?
Well, I think the first thing that jumped out to me was, Khalif Battle suddenly reappeared. I mean, I think he had only had like 2 games in double figures in SEC play, and then he goes out and drops what, like 18 or something like that. Like, where did that come from?
And he didn't make a single 3-pointer. I don't know. It's Khalif is kind of exasperating for me because I see the talent there, and I enjoy talking to him every time he comes into the press conference. And he spoke with us after Saturday's game, and I thought he gave some mature answers, and was you know there's been some rumors around him recently, and he basically was like, "I don't really care. Like, I scored 18 points today. I don't care. We lost. Like, that's my sole focus." And he cares about how many points he scores, but I like when you talk to the media and you're very public about winning is the most important thing. With all that said, he made some layups, he made some drives, he had some contested shots around the rim that he was able to convert. I think he had a couple of and one opportunities. He hasn't really been getting to the free throw line in SEC play. He got there 6 times. It was great to see. Is it sustainable? I have no idea. I guess we'll find out tonight, against Texas A&M. It feels like over the course of the year we've seen him drive in and miss so many layups. I'm inclined to think that that's going to reappear at some point. And Saturday's success was maybe a flash in the pan, but I don't know. It definitely feels like there's a lot of disappointments on this team, and I would put Trevin Brazile at the top of that. An NBA lottery player that, regardless of what he did when he was out there, he hasn't been out there in a while, and Arkansas is clearly missing that. But I think KB is right at the top of that list of a guy that we maybe just had too high of expectations for based on his numbers at Temple, and a big part of that was shooting, and he did damage on Saturday without making a 3-pointer. So I would love to see him be a big focal part of the offense against Texas A&M, at least to start, and let's see what can happen there. But it was good to see, man. I think Arkansas should have won that game, to be quite honest, on Saturday. They missed some opportunities there. A couple guys turned down and open threes in the last possession, and Mekhi Mitchell and Chandler Lawson missed 2 layups inside the final minute that would have given them the lead. Just that kind of season, isn't it, where nothing seems to be going right for these guys.
Yeah, and I saw after the game Mason Jones, former SEC Player of the Year here at Arkansas, tremendous player. He tweeted something along the lines of, "Man, they were scared to take that last shot. No one wanted to take that last shot." And I went back and watched, as you said, I went back and watched the last 2 minutes, and especially that last minute. And I think the two open threes, I believe both of them were Devo, were they not? I mean, Devo at the top of the key, but that was like 15 seconds left on the shot clock, and it was a little bit deep, and it's Devo. Like, I think he had made 2 of 3 from deep that game, but he's still a 24% 3-point shooter this year. Early in the shot clock in a 1-point game, would that have been the best shot? I'm not so sure. He was also open on the wing, I think it was, and he decided to drive in. And I would have liked to maybe see him pull up, mid range, because I mean that's kind of his game. I was okay with him passing up on the three personally. I would have liked to see him shoot the mid range. He tried to dump it off to Mackay, which I get. Mackay had been so good for them. I think he had like 21 points, career high. Uh, but there was a lot of traffic down there too. So I don't know. What was your take on how that kind of unfolded? Like, would you like to see Devo take that three?
I would have, yeah. He was just so open, especially one of them. Like, yeah, he was a little deep on one of them, but he was 2 for 3. He had made a pull up. Let me see. I've got the stats right here. He was 2 for 3 from three and 3 for 6 overall. Not electrifying numbers by any means. The three that he was deep on, I'm okay with him passing that up, but one of those you got to tape. You were open. There's no guarantee. No, people college basketball, NBA basketball teams are shooting threes more than they ever have, right? Like an open three is a great shot in today's game. And Arkansas didn't create a better shot than that. I wish he would have taken the open three, but what it said to me was that they're like the game plan coming out of the timeout was to get the ball to Makai Mitchell, and I think that's a big reason why he probably passed that down. Musselman didn't say that, but I'm just assuming based off Tremont Mark had fouled out, KB had fouled out. There wasn't really like a reliable late game scorer out there on the floor. At least Devo hasn't been that way this year. So I'm assuming with Makai's success, that was the game plan to try and get him the ball. And they were able to at the end for a shot that he missed. But yeah, he was just so open. I wish he would have taken. I think L. Ellis also had an opportunity where the ball was swung to him, I think from Devo. And it was either you could take a three that was not wide open, but a good shot, or drive to get a better shot. And he passed up the three and he drove into a place where if it looked like he could have taken like a couple more steps and gotten to the paint, and instead he settled it and passed it back out or passed it inside somewhere else. And I think that might be the other instance that Mason Jones was kind of referring to. It just felt like at the end of the game that I agree. Nobody really wanted to take the shot because I think the game plan was to get the ball to Makai Mitchell. He was having another tremendous game, has been Arkansas's best player over the last month, I would say. And hey, I think that's probably the right strategy, all things considered, coming out of the timeout. But didn't work out. They lose 71-67, and now they've got another road game with Texas A&M tonight. Ooh, I don't know how this team gets to 15 wins on the year, man. Like I think they're gonna stay below that threshold, and there's going to be a lot of changes in the Bud Walton Arena offices this coming season. Not necessarily, I'm not saying coaching changes or anything like that, but there has to be an inward look at how poorly this season went and what went wrong. Was it roster evaluation? Was it coaching? Roster management? It can't just be let's run it back. We made one mistake. There's got to be some new strategies, new theories, some new blood in terms of just how the basketball program operates. Even if Musselman hangs around and all the assistant coaches stay, there's just got to be something's got to give next year.
I'm really looking forward to asking Eric Musselman that question. Like, what have you learned in your roster construction this year that you can implement moving forward? Does he try to bring in more freshmen, like not rely so heavily on the transfer portal, or is it like, hey, do we need to go try to have a better balance of guards and big men? I'm very curious. And like, do you put different stock into certain like players coming from certain conferences and everything? Because it seemed like this past year they really leaned on the American. They brought in Battle from Temple. You got Davenport from Louisville. And I feel like there was one other one that I can't.
Well, Mark, right, at Houston.
Mark
that was before.
Yeah. And so I mean, Mark has been tremendous. He's been awesome. But then Davenport's been pretty disappointing, and then in Battle, as you said earlier, been one of the more disappointing players on the team. So I don't know. Maybe he's learned something. Maybe he tweaks his formula. Very interested to ask that, but that's probably not something we can ask until after the season because he's not going to give us an answer. He'll be focused on whatever the next game is.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and I mean, I might be speaking for Musselman for the second time this podcast, but I think when he does provide that answer, it might not be so much about where he's going for the players, but what type of player he's going for. Tremont Mark was really the only transfer guy that they brought in that you would put fit with any of these other Eric Musselman teams, where he's hard nosed defensively and can score a it was about the defense with Mark, wasn't it? When he transferred here, like
Yeah.
no one expected him to be the leading scorer. Um, with the other guys, it was about their offense, KB and Davenport, and neither of those guys worked out. And I wonder if I have a feeling that maybe Musselman, after the past 3 years of great success but not quite getting to the Final Four, if maybe he was like, okay, we need more offense to get to that point, and that maybe shifted some of his recruiting and roster management strategies. But it just hasn't worked out that way. Maybe he goes back to the well, and it's a very defense, athletic, tough-minded focus in who he brings in next year. But we're still a little bit ways away from that, and we got to make sure Musselman comes back next year, and because of course those rumors are still out there, and they probably will be out there just until the coaching carousel comes to a close. So no need to talk more basketball. They got a game tonight against Texas A&M, so everything we say here could be obsolete by the time 8 o'clock Central rolls around this evening. But looking forward to seeing how they respond on the road. I think they've played 3 of their last 4. They've played pretty well, and can they make that 4 out of 5? I don't know. They haven't been able to string games like that all season. So, Hutch, I think we can kind of wrap there. Really enjoyed the first baseball weekend at Baum Walker. Looking forward to the rest of the season with you. Had fun discussing this. Tell people where they can find you on social media and where they can read your work, and maybe plug one story that you've got on y'all's website.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter/X at NWA Hutch. I tweet all my stuff out there. And our website is bestofarkansassports.com. You can go read all the content, both written by me and our other writers on there. As far as specific piece, I mean, honestly, just go read my baseball coverage. If you really like baseball, I go pretty in depth and cover lots of things and stuff that we maybe didn't get to talk about, despite our lengthy discussion on this podcast. So yeah, go check out all of my baseball coverage from this weekend. I think you won't be disappointed if you're a baseball fan.
Yeah, I definitely. I took a look at your Game 4 win stuff that you wrote, and I did. I liked what the stuff that you wrote about Colin Fisher and his performance. Good stuff. So just an endorsement there for myself. And yeah, you can find me on X and Twitter at JacksonFuller16 and read my stuff on SW Times. I've also got baseball coverage from this weekend. I really loved the Hagen Smith feature that I wrote just about him kind of unfazed by the hype of the season. His opening day start didn't really turn out the way I would have liked to, given that I wrote more than 1,000 words on him. But that's okay. Reporters jinx something like that. And we'll have great coverage, I think, from both of us moving forward all season. And, of course, every Monday, of course, today's Tuesday, but every early in the week moving forward, we'll have this podcast to recap all the Arkansas baseball shenanigans. So keep it locked in. Hutch, thank you so much for joining, and I will talk to you soon, man.